Merry Christmas, baby. Reindeer's coming out to play. Santa Claus is packing the presents, making sure you've been behaving okay.
Hi everyone, Christina Werner here. Welcome to day 20 of the holiday card series for 2022. Today I'm going to be using the Holiday Horizon stencil and also the Holiday Horizon stamp set. Now this stencil is one that I mentioned I was missing from my stash, so I had to order it. It just arrived and I thought I'd make a couple cards with it. Now the first card for today is this one right here. I'm going to show it to you before we get going so you know where we're headed. So as you can see, it's got that circle shape on the outside and then kind of a slope at the bottom, creating kind of like a hill or something like that. I'm going to start by creating my circle mask. Now this circle die is one of the additional circles dies from Waffle Flower, and I've used it to cut out some masking paper that's the exact size of my 5x7 card. And I did it this way because it protects the entire card front as I'm doing my inking. So if I happen to get any ink on my fingertips or anything like that, it will protect the area around my card or around the circle central image area. So I'm applying this to my cardstock. Now my cardstock is cut to 5x7, so it is the front of my card, but it is not the folded card yet. I'll adhere it to the card base at the end. So I'm applying my circle mask, and now I'm going to create that sort of sloped hillside that's at the bottom of the circle. So I'm taking another piece of masking paper, and just with a pencil, I'm going to kind of draw that sloped line. I'll take my scissors and trim that out, and then I'm going to adhere it to the bottom of this circle. But before I do that, I realized my stencil, I wanted to use this center tree area in a way that it wouldn't work when it was still attached to the stencil. So I'm going to perform some stencil surgery and cut that out. And then I can start assembling things. And once I start to use that tree stencil, you'll see what I mean, that I had to remove it from the rest of the stencil. So I put my sloped line down and I'm going to trim off the sides just so it's a little bit easier to work with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take Ballet Slippers ink or Slipper ink from Concord and Ninth. I've just recently re-inked it so it's nice and juicy. And I'm going to use a foam blending tool to apply it over the entire masked circle area. I'm doing this because I want this nice pale pink shade. Now as this dries, it'll dry back and even out and it'll be a nice pale pink. So here's that tree stencil that I cut out from the center of the stencil, and I'm placing it right over the bottom section of the circle, and then I'm using some Post-it tape just to hold that in place. That's going to stay on my card design for the remainder of the inking. Now, when I started to put the stencil in so I could do these mountain lines, I decided that I wanted to cut my stencil apart even more so that I could use the two lines separately and kind of space them out a little bit more. So there's the top line of this section, and I'm going to bring in the bottom line. And I'm sliding it over a little bit and turning it over, trying to get just a different kind of mountain line. And this is going to allow me to have a thicker area, a bigger stripe right across that center. So now I'm going to use blush ink from Simon Says Stamp. And because I've got that really intricate tree area that's just sitting there, it's not glued down to the card or anything, I'm using a pouncing motion with my foam blending tool. I don't want to go side to side or anything like that because it would disturb the tree stencil. So I'm just going up and down, adding lots and lots of ink until it's a nice solid color. I'm then going to peel up all of my masking tape or Post-it tape, and then it will reveal that mountain line. Okay, so now I'm going to take that same section of the mountain line, and I'm going to line it up at the bottom of that darker area, and that's just going to protect that area up above. And I'll tape that in place. And then I'm going to just blend all the way down to the bottom of the circle. So this is going to add a second color, or I should say a third color, that goes from that kind of horizon line of the mountain all the way down to the bottom of the trees. Just taping these in place so nothing's going to move around because I don't want it to shift and have that color go where I don't want it to go. So the third color I'm using is Cheeky. This is actually the medium color. I've used the lightest color, the darkest color, and now I'm going to use the medium. Once again, I'm doing that up and down pouncing motion so that I don't disturb the stencil at all. It's a great way to get a nice solid color. So as I remove all of these stencils, I'm going to see the main design on my card. Now, those two colors, the two darkest colors, look very, very similar right now. At first, I was doubting my color choices because I just wasn't sure if it would work out. But I'm actually going to start drying this with my heat tool just to speed along the drying process. And you'll see that as the inks dry, they dry back and even out. So notice how similar those colors are right now. I'm going to edit out a bunch of the heat setting here. And now you'll be able to see that those colors have dried back quite a bit. And you can see the color difference between the darkest and the medium shade. So I'm going to do some heat embossing on top of this design. So I'm first going to test the area to make sure that it's completely dry. And I'm glad I tested it because it was not completely dry. You can see that embossing powder sticking to my inked areas. So I'm going to use a clean dry brush just to brush away that embossing powder. And then I'm going to use my heat tool to dry this even further. So when you're going to be doing some heat embossing and stamping on top of an inked area, it's always a great idea to test it first. So into my Misty, I'm going to do a bunch of stamping. Now, I tested it a second time and everything just slid right off when I flicked the cardstock, so I knew it was ready to move on. So I'm going to put that piece in my Misty, and I've positioned a greeting and also 2 deer at the bottom right on that ground line. I'm using an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm stamping the greeting and the 2 deer in Versamark ink. So I'm stamping that down, and then I'm going to be using some white embossing powder over the top of these. I kind of wanted the deer to look like they were fading into the white of the card. So that's why I stamped them in white or stamped them in Versamark and then covered them with white embossing powder. So they don't look very bright right now, but as I melt the embossing powder with my heat tool, the white of the powder brightens and it looks really, really nice. So my card design is basically finished, but you'll notice the legs on the deer just weren't quite connecting with the white area down below. So I used a white paint pen just to connect the legs down to the white. And then I adhered my inked and stamped design directly onto a 5x7 card front. So I love how this design turned out. It's exactly how I pictured it in my head when I was designing the stencil and the stamps, and I'm so glad that I have that stencil now so I could create it. So I'm going to move on to a second card. This is what this card looks like, and you can see that there's basically 3 colors of green ink and then black. So I'm going to be using the colors Sage, Aspen, and Pine, all from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm going to start with the lightest color, Aspen, and I'm going to blend that with a blending brush coming from the top of the card. I'm just going to bring all of that ink down, but I don't want it to have the color come all the way down. I want it to just fade to white fairly quickly. So after I had all of that blended down, then I grabbed my stencil and we're going to do a mountain line right at the top. So I've taken the top of my stencil since I already cut it apart, and I'm going to use that same color of ink, Aspen, and just blend down from that stencil line. I'm going to let it fade to white as it goes down. And then once I have all of my blending done, then I can move on to the next kind of horizon that's going to go right below that. So as it kind of fades off to white, it's totally okay because we're going to have another horizon line right below. So there's the first horizon line, and I'm going to do a line of trees. So I'm sliding my card into the stencil, And I've got that area down below that's revealed, and it's going to add a tree line. I'm going to use a little bit of that Post-it tape on the back of my project to hold the stencil in place. And I'm going to tape it above and below the stencil, and then I can flip it back over and start blending with my ink color. I'm moving on to the second color, which is Sage. This is a nice green, and it goes on very, very dark right now, but just like those inks on the first card, these are going to dry back and even out, and they'll lighten up as they dry. There's that blending with my second color of green ink. And I did have some splotchiness around the tree line, and I thought, oh, do I want to redo this? But then I remembered this ink is going to dry back, so a lot of those little splotchy dots will kind of be hidden. For the third horizon line, I'm bringing in this area where it has trees on the side. I'm going to puzzle piece that center tree area in that I used on the first card, and I'll just tape that in place. I just wanted the continuing line along the bottom. So I'm going to have some trees over on the left-hand side. This is the color Pine. So I've got the trees on the left side of the card, and then it's just kind of a more straight horizon line going off to the right end of the card. I just wanted the trees on the left-hand side of the card. All right, the last little bit of stenciling, I'm just going to do a pretty gentle ground line, and I'm going to be inking that on in black. So I'm using intense black ink from Honeybee, and I'm just using a foam blending tool because I want this to be super, super black and flat. So in order to add a bunch of ink all at once, I just used a foam blending tool as opposed to using a blending brush, which would add the ink gradually. So into my Misty it goes, and I'm going to stamp my greeting as well as this small child pulling a sled. I thought it was just super cute down the bottom. And you could still see the feet of the child coming down below that horizon line. So I'm going to use just a little bit of Post-it tape and whatever black ink is left on my blending tool just to kind of blend in that area so it blends in with the stamp. I then adhered my inked and stamped design to a card front, and that finishes the card. So this second card is actually an A2 card. It's 4 1/4 by 5.5 tall, and then the first card was 5 by 7. So I used the same stamp set and stencil for both of these cards, but they look very different. I love how these turned out. So if you want to create these cards, go ahead and check out the stencil and the stamp set down below in the supplies. It is linked down there for you, so you can just click over and do a little bit of shopping. The stencil, I think, is pretty universal for kind of year-round. The stamp set's a little bit more seasonal, more Christmas. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's cards. I'll be back on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. with card number 21 for the Holiday Card Series. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.